Greetings, loved ones. Today we're going to talk more in depth about the different types of trauma. Help us get these messages out. Please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell and share these messages with others. So, what is trauma? Emotional trauma and psychological trauma is what we're going to talk about. Trauma is an emotional response that is caused by experiencing a single incident or a series of distressing or traumatic emotional or psychological events, or both. Just because a person experiences a distressing event does not mean they will experience trauma. Today we're going to cover the types of trauma a person may experience, symptoms, 5 stages of trauma, treatment, and coping options, and when to seek help from a professional. So what is trauma? When a person experiences a distressing event or series of events, such as abuse, a bad accident, rape, or other sexual violence, combat, or a natural disaster, they may have an emotional response called trauma. Immediate reactions after a traumatic event include shock and denial, while more long-term reactions may include mood swings, relationship challenges, flashbacks, and physical symptoms. These responses may be concerning to the person experiencing them and those around them, but they are normal responses to traumatic events. While the trauma itself was unavoidable and the responses are normal, they can still be problematic and dangerous. Professional support from a mental health professional, such as a psychologist or psychiatrist, can help with coping and recovery. So let's look at the different types of trauma. Trauma can be either physical or emotional. Physical trauma is a serious bodily injury. Emotional trauma is the emotional response to a disturbing event or situation. More specifically, emotional trauma can be either acute or chronic. Acute emotional trauma is the emotional response that happens during and shortly after a single distressing event. Chronic emotional trauma is a long-term emotional response a person experiences from prolonged or repeated distressing events that span for months or years. Additionally, complex emotional trauma is the emotional response associated with multiple different distressing events that may or may not be intertwined. Emotional trauma may stem from various types of events or situations throughout infancy and childhood as well as adulthood. So let's talk about the types of traumatic events. Traumatic events include, but are not limited to, the following: child abuse, child neglect, bullying, physical abuse, domestic violence, violence in the community, natural disasters, medical trauma, sexual abuse, and sex trafficking, substance abuse, intimate partner violence, verbal abuse, accidents, war, refugee trauma, terrorism, traumatic grief, intergenerational trauma. Those are the things that are the different types of trauma. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms of trauma can be both emotional and physical. The emotional response may lead to intense feelings that impact a person in terms of attitude, behavior, functioning, and their views of the world. A person may also experience post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, or an adjustment disorder following a traumatic event. This is a disorder characterized by a belief that life and safety are at risk with feelings of fear, terror, or helplessness. Adverse childhood experiences. Remember, this is ACE. With 62% of adults having at least one ACE and 25% of adults having 3 or more ACEs, the question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You are called, we are all called to be champions for justice, and those who suffer violence They need to know that those who love them and those who don't even know them will step out and reach out to give them the help they need before it is too late. If you are a victim of violence, listen to me. You are valued. You are loved. You are intelligent. And yes, you are worthy. God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. I want you to know that there is a way out from your suffering. I want you to know that it's not your fault. And abuse is not love. And most of all, I want you to know that you are not alone. If you're a victim of violence, please reach out to somebody today. If you're in a dangerous situation, dial 911 for help. And if you know of anybody who's suffering violence, tell the authorities. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the psychological effects of trauma. Until then, God bless you.